Today on Xtreme 4x4, Project AJ is back as Ian and Jesse do some custom fab on their ultimate alloy Jeep. Plus, New Mexico is more than the land of enchantment. It's a rock crawler's paradise.
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4 and part 2 of our AJ buildup, our ultimate Jeep build. Now, we know a lot of you guys wouldn't be building a Jeep from the ground up, but we thought this would introduce you to parts and ideas for any TJ or CJ for that matter. And I mean, come on, we had to go full bore on this one.
Good to have you back.
Oh, it's so good to be back.
For those of you who don't remember, last week Jessie was rushed to the hospital and then take her appendix out. But just like a trooper, she's back in the shop this week.
Yep, I'm feeling better, but I'm still not 100%, so I'm gonna leave all the heavy stuff to Ian.
As usual.
Oh, come on, that ain't even cool.
Now, if you remember, last time we began the mock-up procedure by hanging a Curry high pinion 9-inch front axle and Rock Jock 60 in the rear on a Skyjacker 8-inch Rock Ready double flex suspension. We completed the rolling chassis by installing a TerraFlex high steer knuckle package, worn freewheel and hubs, and then added a set of Pro Comp X-Terrain tires and polished aluminum Xtreme wheels.
We then dropped this super cool Aqualoo aluminum body onto the Advanced Frameworks hybrid frame. And that brings us where we are right now.
And today, we're gonna mount the winch, start dealing with the frame side of the roll cage, deal with some clearance issues that have come with the transmission, install some more parts. Then everything on there is gonna end up on the floor, and that frame's gonna be sent out for coating.
Bye. Bye, frame. The first step is to drill for the body mounts. With the holes cut in the tub, we will go ahead and slip in this body mount kit we got from Skyjacker. One thing you gotta have on a serious trail rig is a winch. For AJ, we chose this Warren 9.5 TI thermometric winch. It's got a 5/16" aircraft quality cable and a rated line pull of 9,500 pounds. The thermometric feature allows you to know that if the motor begins to overheat, this LED lights up on the hand controls. All we gotta do is mount this baby on the front where it's gonna get a lot of use. After making a template, Ian cut some 1/8" plate for the mounting surface. Then welded it to the frame.
Now you may be wondering why we're spending all this time mounting this winch when the truck obviously isn't close to being finished. Well, the reality is you want to get done all this fabrication before you send the frame out to be coated, or you're gonna have to grind off that coating to do this welding. Now, winches aren't cheap, so we went ahead and bent up this stinger bar to protect ours against off-road obstacles. I threw this tape on here to use as a reference line because from this point back is where our roll cage is gonna start. We're gonna start with everything outside of the body. We're gonna bring bars off the frame and back here to protect the engine, and then we'll also be putting the bars under the floor that are gonna tie that cage into the frame.
With the body on its mounts, we can go ahead and start making the frame side of the roll cage. There will be 6 mounting plates that I'll make that will mount onto the body. It'll weld onto the top part of this tubing, and then there will be bolts that go up through the floor. I'll then gusset it from here to here for strength, and then this end of the tubing will actually weld onto the frame. This all together makes a super strong roll cage. Since we're making so many of these floor plates, we went ahead and made a template so we don't have to locate the holes over and over again. It'll save us a lot of time in the end. And what we do is we take the floor plate, line it up with the edges, clamp it down, and then we can bring in the plasma cutter for the center hole and the drill for the outside holes. You can go ahead and use a hole saw or a drill press, but this will save us more time in the end. Pretty cool little piece, huh?
While Jesse finishes up those roll cage mounts, I've gone ahead and bent up our first piece of this front roll cage. I'm going to tie this into the cage with some uprights, and then I'm going to brace it against the stinger that we showed you earlier. All I have left to do is notch this piece.
With these frame side mounts in place, we can go ahead and start planning some of our body protection to protect this aluminum tub.
I grabbed this as a scrap to give us an idea.
Right on.
I think that'll look nice.
Yeah, something along the lines.
Works for me.
Make sure you stick around. We'll have this thing completely figured out by the time you come back.
Also after the break, action from New Mexico's Cliffhanger Classic when Xtreme 4x4 returns.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4 and part 2 of our AJ project.
Now, the only thing better than building a Jeep like AJ is the chance that we're going to have to take this thing out to some of the most extreme off-road places all over North America, like Rubicon, Moab, or maybe even the place where we're going to go to now.
And when you're talking extreme rock crawling, the sandstone cliffs in New Mexico test even some of the most experienced drivers.
Located on the borders of Arizona, Utah, and Colorado, Farmington, New Mexico is rock crawling nirvana.
There's no real restrictions on where you can and cannot go. So it's pretty much you come out into Chokecherry Canyon and you just go at it.
Farmington has to have some of the best wheeling. People come from miles, hundreds of miles, all over from the U.S. to do four-wheeling here, even as far away as Iceland.
With 50 trails in a 5-mile radius, there's enough fun for everyone.
Like most places where you drive for 2 or 3 hours and get 3 climbs. We're going to drive for 30 minutes and do 15 climbs.
Some of them are pretty easy, some of them are really hard, probably in the 5 range. Some of the competition climbs, they're a one-shot deal. You either make it or you don't.
Ooh, it was a hell of a ride. Pretty scary. Kind of fun though.
Guys say it moves as good as on its roof as it does on its tires.
Yeah. For the regulars, scraping some metal ain't no thing.
That's what I come out here for, just to unleash the beast. You know, hear that metal mashing and them horsepower rumbling.
You wreck, get up, come back harder.
You want to get body damage.
It can be extreme enough to where you total rigs within 2-3 seconds. Sometimes it happens. That's how extreme it can get.
And sometimes the saves are as breathtaking as the carnage.
Back it up! Back it up!
Everybody likes to climb hard and, you know, make the big climbs, but it don't always happen.
To make it happen, they have to conquer this Farmington terrain.
We have huge, huge ledges to climb. Sometimes it takes a lot of horsepower. They're a one-shot deal. We call them suicide climbs.
It's slick. It can get really slick. They call this slick rock in Moab, but that stuff has more grip than this does. The sandstone out here is so flaky in some areas that you can spin all day on it.
And out here, you've got to do what we call the bump. What that is get up against the ledge, you get your front end up on it. Instead of just trying to crawl up things, which you're not going to do in Farmington, is you just power brake it up and then use the torque of the motor to carry you up the bump. And the more power you got, the easier it is to do that. And you never run out if you've got plenty.
Jerry's 98 TJ has what it takes.
We put a small block Chevy in it. It's got 410 cubic inches, 400 horsepower, and about 500 foot-pounds of torque.
Out here, relying on horsepower and torque won't get you far.
Our Jeeps are set up real low to the ground and real long. And that's perfect for our terrain because we've got a lot of vertical climbs and we want to keep them so we can climb. The shocks are the key to making anything climb right. We use the Fox shocks, then we use the limiter straps on it, and then we use also bump stops because we don't want to overextend those shocks because that's what tears up shocks is overextending, either one. We also use a PAL power assist ram. What that does is it multiplies your steering capacity by 3. So when you get up against a rock, when you need to turn right or left and it's jammed up against it, you can still turn and still get to be where you want to be.
He's already spent 60 G on his rig, money well spent for the thrills he gets every time he battles the trails in Farmington.
A little bit of adrenaline rush every time you get going up that climb. Even if you've done it before, you still get that adrenaline rush. Basically, we're all adrenaline junkies, and we love it.
The guy with the red shirt and the little goatee, that was one of my compadres from back in my days in Wyoming. Hey, Spencer. You always told me that it was a pretty cool place. I'll be out there soon.
I like how they have to bump their way up the hills because the rocks are so slick. It takes a lot of skill to wheel out there.
Power braking.
That's true. Now, check with us after the break because we've got a couple more things to mock up on AJ, and then we're going to tear this truck back apart.
Got an idea for the show? Drop us a line at Xtreme4x4TV.com.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4 and our aluminum Jeep project. We're about halfway through our frame mock-up stage by adding the winch mounts and began our roll cage structure. Now we're going to go ahead and build these rock rails so we can protect the body when we're going over the rocks. And we're going to be using our roll cage frame side mounts as a guideline.
It took us a while to come up with a rock bar design that we liked. The part we were really watching out for was the front corner of this tub. Now, although body damage may be an issue, the real thing we're worried about is something getting jammed in here and hanging the truck up. So we want to wrap that bar around here to give us a smooth radiused edge. What that will do is if we hit an obstacle, it'll just basically roll down this bar and the Jeep will be able to continue on.
I've got a few more pieces to build to make our rock rails even stronger. This piece will tie the two frame side mounts together. This piece will tie the frame side mounts to the rock rail. This piece will tie the rock rail into the roll cage. And then this piece will tie the roll cage back into the frame at the towers.
Building one side of that roll cage and rock bar is one thing, making this side of the Jeep match up is another. Now, before we start, we want to install a bunch of stuff to check for fit and make sure nothing's in the way. We're going to start with this brake booster that we got from Master Power Brakes. It's a direct replacement for a CJ brake, but it has an upgraded booster that's going to give you more braking power when you need it. Now, we also needed all new brake lines. So we went to Inline Tube for some pre-bent pieces. Now the nice thing about pre-bent is A, you always know they're gonna fit, and B, these ones are stainless steel. So not only are they gonna last a long time, but the finish is gonna match the Jeep really well. These things will fit right in place. It's easy as pie.
Whenever you're building a one-off custom rig, you're going to run into snags. And in this case, no one had a listing for our header application. So Patriot Exhaust Products was kind enough to send us 2 sets. And the one that works, they'll add to their application guide. So let's check it out. All right. Now it looks like this set would be perfect if we wanted to run our exhaust right into our bell housing. But of course we don't want to do that. So let's try out the other set. All right, now that's more of what I'm talking about. We don't have any clearance issues, so this will be the set that we're going to send out to get ceramic coated.
To narrow our options down to just 2 headers, we looked in the Patriot catalog and found that they had a specification list for their full-length headers. All you have to do is take 3 measurements off your block, call them up, and they'll help you choose what header's best for your application. We're going to mock these ones into place so we can check them against the brake lines and the fuel lines. We'll get the truck up on the hoist and show you another clearance problem we ran into. The transmission pan of our 700R4 is contacting the skid plate. To solve this, we're going to cut a piece of it away, then we'll bend a tube up to stretch the skid plate around the entire transmission pan. Not only will that get the transmission down, it'll protect the entire pan against the rocks.
Looks pretty good. You think it's actually going to protect that transmission pan?
Well, we'll throw a couple more tubes underneath here and maybe plate the whole thing before we're done.
Right on. Make sure you stick around because during the break I'm going to finish up the roll cage and then we're going to run some brake lines and
then we're going to tear this truck apart.
Before we strip this frame naked, there's a little more prep to be done.
Oh, it's got to be close.
We started running our brake lines, finished our driver's side rock rail, and driver's side engine cage.
The last thing we'll put on this frame for the mock-up is the Advanced Framework spare tire carrier they included with the frame. Now the best thing about their spare tire carrier is it uses a modified spindle for its pivot point, and all you have to do is pack the bearings with a lot of grease and it's guaranteed not to seize up on you.
Now it's time to get her on the hoist and start stripping her down. Okay, go.
You good?
All right. Now with the body off the frame, I can go ahead and drill all the holes that I marked out earlier for our brake lines. It's easier to do it this way because I have more room to move. Now, it's imperative that we get all this done before we send the frame out for coating, because otherwise we're going to be drilling through the coating or having to grind it off for other purposes. Now I can go ahead and start tapping the holes.
With the hard lines in place, we can mount these tabs to the frame for our new flex lines that Skyjacker sent with the kit. Skyjacker includes a longer flex line whenever it's needed. All we have to do is weld these tabs to the frame.
Well, there you have it. A super tough frame for a super tough Jeep.
Nothing like building a Jeep and then taking it all back apart again.
At least next time we see it, it'll be coated and we can put it back together again.
That's true. And next week, we're going to start again on the Ranger for even more crazy build-ups. And then wait till you see the engine that's going in this thing. It is awesome.
We'll see you next week.